Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News and Indian Perspective on All India Radio. This is R.S. Raghu bringing glimpses of the major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring to you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment and more. The headlines. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi lays foundation stone and inaugurates development projects worth nearly 11,000 crore rupees in Assam. Bihu performance by over 11,000 folk dancers and drummers in Guwahati enters Guinness World Records. Festival of Vishu, Rongali Bihu, Nav Varsh, Vaishakhi, Meshadi and Puttand Pirappu being celebrated in different parts of India. India's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman says global policy responses required for crypto assets. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar inaugurates Vuzi Bridge in Mozambique built by India. India, Japan and France announce common platform for Sri Lanka creditors. In sports, Aman Sehrawat clinches India's first gold medal at Asian Wrestling Championship 2023 in Astana, and in IPL cricket, Sunrisers Hyderabad set a victory target of 229 runs before Kolkata Knight Riders in Kolkata. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi laid the foundation stone and inaugurated various development projects worth nearly 11,000 crore rupees at Saru Sajai Stadium at Guwahati in Assam on Friday. Addressing the gathering, Mr. Modi expressed happiness about the launch of several projects including AIIMS, 3 medical colleges and railways projects. He said the government is laying emphasis on road, rail and air connectivity in the region.
आज नॉर्थ ईस्ट की रेल कनेक्टिविटी से उससे जुड़ी हुई कई प्रोजेक्ट की भी शुरुआत हुई है। आज ब्रह्मपुत्र पर कनेक्टिविटी बढ़ाने के लिए एक और ब्रिज पर काम शुरू हुआ है। मिथेनॉल प्लांट बनने से असम अब पड़ोसी देशों को भी मिथेनॉल एक्सपोर्ट कर पाएगा। असमिया कला, संस्कृति, परंपरा के प्रतीक रंग घर के रीडेवलपमेंट और सुंदरीकरण का काम भी आज शुरू हुआ है। संस्कृति और तेज विकास का जो ये उत्सव हम सभी मना रहे हैं, उसके लिए भी आप सबको बहुत बहुत बधाई।
The Prime Minister also witnessed a colourful Bihu program performed by more than 10,000 Bihu dancers. Addressing the gathering, Mr. Modi remarked that the efforts and synergy of thousands of artists from Assam are being witnessed by the country as well as the world with great pride. He conveyed his greetings to the people of Assam and the country on the occasion of Bihu. The Prime Minister said that Baisakhi is being celebrated in North Indian states including Punjab. While Bangla people are celebrating Poila Baisakh, Vishu will be celebrated in Kerala. He said these festivals reflect the spirit of Ek Bharat, Shreshth Bharat. On the occasion, Assam Chief Minister Himanta Biswa Sarma received a certificate from the Guinness World Records team for the record-making feat of largest Bihu dance and largest Dhol drum ensemble. The feat was achieved by 11,304 folk dancers and 2,548 drummers who performed at Saru Sajai Stadium in Guwahati on 13th of April. Earlier in the day, Mr. Modi addressed an event on the culmination of the Platinum Jubilee celebration of the Guwahati High Court in Assam. Speaking at the event, the Prime Minister said the aspirations of Indian citizens in the 21st century are unbounded. He said the judiciary as a pillar of democracy has a strong and sensitive role to play in meeting these aspirations. He said this solution of redundant laws helped in reducing the number of cases in the courts.
हमारे यहाँ के कई कानूनी प्रावधान पूरी तरह अप्रासंगिक हो चुके हैं। हमने ऐसे 2000 केंद्रीय कानूनों को खत्म कर दिया। 40,000 से ज्यादा कंप्लायंसेस को भी समाप्त किया है। व्यापार के दौरान होने वाली अनेक छोटी गलतियों को भी हमने डीक्रिमिनलाइज कर दिया है। इस अप्रोच ने देश की अदालतों में केसेस की संख्या को भी कम करने में अहम भूमिका निभाई है।
The Prime Minister also dedicated to the nation All India Institute of Medical Sciences AIIMS at Guwahati in Assam. He added that after 2014, 300 new medical colleges were set up all across the country. He mentioned that work on 15 new AIIMS is underway and most of them have already started functioning. The Prime Minister asserted that India is committed to make the country free from tuberculosis. India's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has said global policy responses are required for crypto assets as its implications can impact both emerging and developed economies. Ms. Sitharaman was briefing media on the culmination of the second G20 meeting of finance ministers and central bank governors under the India's presidency at Washington, D.C. in the United States. The meeting was held on 12th and 13th of this month on the margins of the 2023 spring meetings of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank Group. Speaking on the possible outcomes of the meeting, Nirmala Sitharaman said finance ministers and central bank governors have recognized the urgency to address debt vulnerabilities, including strengthening multilateral coordination towards addressing increasing debt distress in low-income and vulnerable middle-income countries. The minister said G20 members appreciated India's presidency's focus on the important agenda around reforming and strengthening multilateral development banks to address global challenges of the 21st century, including economic development and climate finance. Finance Minister Sitharaman and Reserve Bank of India Governor Shaktikant Das jointly chaired the meeting, which witnessed the participation of around 350 delegates from G20 members, 13 invitee countries, and various international and regional organizations. The two-day international meeting of Women 20 organized under G20 in Jaipur concluded on Friday. The second day of the meet began with a yoga session. This was followed by a session on grassroots leadership and entrepreneurship in which various speakers presented their views. The session was also addressed by Minister of State for Railways and Textiles, Darshana Jardosh. In her address, Mrs. Jardosh said that the need of the hour is to empower women economically, socially, and politically. She also discussed in detail about the steps taken in this regard by the central government in the past few years. This meeting focused on the theme of women-led development leverage women's untapped potential to accelerate inclusive and sustainable future. India's W20 agenda focuses on 5 key priorities: women's entrepreneurship, grassroots women's leadership, bridging the gender-digital divide, education and skill development, and climate change. And now, in today's Hotspot section, we bring you a discussion on the outcomes of second G20 Finance Ministers and Central Bank Governors meeting in Washington, D.C., USA. In conversation are Sharat Kohli, economic analyst, and Arjun J. Chaudhary, AIR correspondent.
I'm joined in the studio by economic analyst Shri Sharat Kohli on the topic of the second G20 Finance Ministers and Central Bank Governors meeting. We'll try and understand from our expert what the outcomes are of this second G20 Finance Ministers meeting and how the central governors will decide on policy in their respective nations. Sharat, a warm welcome to you in the program.
My greetings to all the listeners of All India Radio.
Sharat, for the benefit of our listeners, do tell us the implications and importance of this G20 grouping and what does it mean when finance ministers and central bank governors come together to discuss on any issue concerning policy.
Arjun, what makes this meeting different and special for us is for 2 prime reasons, and I would love to highlight those reasons here. The first reason being that India now holds presidency of G20. So I think the world and the G20, they are the biggest countries of the world. Some of the largest economies of the world are part of G20. So therefore, India taking the lead. So whatever India is going to say, the world is going to listen. I think not just listen, but people are going to look up to, considering the fact that India has been declared as the fastest growing economy in the world just a few days ago, 5.9%. In a situation and a circumstance where the world economy is coming under pressure, 2.8% is the global economic outlook, whereas Indian outlook is double or even more than double, shall I say. So I think the world will be looking up to it. So I think that is my first point. The second point, which makes this meeting important, is the situation around the globe, because this meeting is happening at a time when the world economy is facing a challenge. The challenge was COVID from 2020 to 2022 early, or maybe 2021. For 2.5 years, the world was badly impacted by COVID-related trouble. And soon as the countries tried to come out of the COVID problem, we had the Russia-Ukraine war. And I think that spiraled into a huge economic crisis because the prices started rising, the supply chains were disrupted completely, energy prices shot up, fuel prices shot up, dollars started rising, interest rates started rising. So there were multiple economic parameters which went completely haywire, and the world had not even recovered from COVID, and it had to take the second blow. So I think this meeting is happening at a time when the world economy is going through a very, very challenging time. And I would say that recession is knocking at the doors of the world. So every single challenge on the economic and financial front that this world is facing is on the table for discussion. So I think these are the two things, Arjun, in my understanding, which makes this meeting very special and very different from such kind of meetings which have happened in the past.
What about fiscal policy in terms of countries incurring debt in order to facilitate their economy? So how important is managing debt? We have Prime Minister Narendra Modi even talking about the importance of debt, which has to be discussed as well at these forums. The importance of managing and administering how bonds are issued and the kind of debt being incurred by nations.
Well, I think after COVID, Arjun, we did see a challenge on that front. And even if you take Indian example, our debt was between 50 and 60 lakhs a few years ago. But then because of the multiple development initiatives taken by the government of over 100 lakh crores, I'm talking of the Indian perspective, we can then replicate to the world. Then came COVID and, India had to come out with a Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan where lakhs of crores of schemes were launched. So I think a country which is emerging, which is developing, for them, I think debt to a certain extent becomes normal. But then the challenge before the world is that what when you get over leveraged? That is, take for example, America. American debt is far more than the GDP. India's debt at least is not anywhere near the GDP right now. So I think the concern is when your debt to GDP ratio gets completely haywire and, it becomes very, very adverse. I think that is a panic button for the country. So that is what the Prime Minister referred about, that we should have global policy on debt, that how much debt can be taken, how much can a country leverage, and then the interest rates. Let's not forget the big culprit, interest rates. We look at what has happened to the interest rates over the last 1.5 years. They have shot through the roof. So I think debt becomes even more adverse when debt servicing becomes adverse, whether it is repayment of the debt or it is the servicing of the interest. So the interest rates hovering around in a country like America, hovering around 6-7%, which is unheard of for countries which used to have 0% interest. They are not used to giving 6 to 7% interest for several decades now. So I think that is a challenge. They are finding it tough to service the debt. And we've seen Arjun countries collapse. We've seen Sri Lanka, what happened to Sri Lanka. We saw Pakistan, countries which are in a debt trap right now. They've got nothing to repay. They need more debt to repay the debt. They need more debt to repay the interest. They need more debt to be restructured, which is why, India, France and Japan just a couple of days ago took an initiative and come forward to make sure that we can restructure Sri Lanka's debt, because they know that even if IMF has sanctioned $2.8 or $2.9 billion bailout package, it is not going to last forever. So I think that is what the concern is, that can the debts be made more friendly? Can we have a longer duration of repayment? Can the interest rates be lower? Basically, to try and make the debt more friendly is one. Second, how much of debt is enough? I think that is also on the table. And I think as far as the Indian, G20 presidentship is concerned and Indian leadership is concerned in G20, see, India's Nara of Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, I think India is pursuing that throughout, because what India is focusing on, Arjun, is inclusive growth. If we say Sabka Saath, Sabka Vishwas domestically, I think India is trying to replicate, and this principle is applicable universally, even across the world.
So we had the Global Sovereign Debt Roundtable GSDR meeting that was held on the 12th of April, and this was co-chaired by the Honorable Finance Minister, the MD of the IMF, and the World Bank President as well. So which do you think is the more important issue that has to be tackled, or is it to be taken together? Debt management to avoid a debt crisis or a debt trap, or do you see inflation as a primary concern for central banks right now, even though there seems to be a great deal of interrelationship between both the monetary policy and the fiscal policy of nations?
Well, you hit the nail on the head, Arjun, because what you said in the second part of your statement just now, both are related to each other. I mean, if we talk on inflation and debt or interest rate, they are related to each other. There is a cause-effect relationship between the two. And we saw that happening when the inflation shot through the roof. We found interest rates climbing and they were going through the roof. As I just said, for a country like America or Japan, which were used to 0% interest rates, I mean, 6 to 7% interest rates was unimaginable for these countries. So I think inflation became the culprit and the sufferer were the interest rate as a monetary policy tool. And as far as the fiscal policy is concerned, I think governments around the country with regard to their tax revenue growth and other aspects, they were struggling because it was very difficult. When the inflation rises, your demand falls. If your demand falls, your tax collection goes down. So they are both interrelated, and that is why, if you ask me as to why are the finance ministers and the central bank governors meeting together, because they work in tandem. I mean, they have to synchronize with each other, whereas the monetary policy on one hand has to be driven by the fiscal policies. On the other hand, fiscal policies get driven by monetary policies. So there is a cause-effect relationship between the two, Arjun, which is why I'm glad that both the group of these meetings are happening together. And I think a very synchronized approach is being taken, that monetary policy should go hand in hand with the fiscal policy, and fiscal policy needs to keep in mind the decisions taken by the monetary policy. So that is the whole idea. And I think the biggest point of discussion in these meetings must have been interest rates, which has been the talk of the world for that matter. The repo rate in India, or the Fed rate in America, or Bank of England rate. I think those rates must be the biggest point of discussion. And I'm sure underneath that discussion must be inflation, that for God's sake, bring the inflation down, make sure that the supply chain disruptions are removed, make sure that the excess liquidity is sucked away so that inflation comes under control. And the moment inflation comes under control, I think interest rates can see a U-turn happening. And we're already seeing that. We saw the American inflation rate coming down a couple of days ago, which should motivate the American Fed to probably take a pause in the Fed meeting. And we saw this pause happening in India. And with Indian inflation cooling down, we can see a further pause in the RBI's monetary policy to be happening 2 months hereafter. So I think interest rates and inflation are the two most important agendas. Besides that, Arjun, if you allow me, I think tax transparency was also one of the issues, because sharing of information with each other is the biggest, because tax evasion has been a matter of trouble for the countries around, these tax havens and, people trying to use transfer pricing and other techniques to evade tax. So if tax transparency comes, and OECD has been mentioning about this time and again. So I think if this information sharing between the countries happens, and a classic example is India and Switzerland. We all know what reputation Switzerland had some time ago. But ever since the Indian government has signed the mutual information sharing agreement, we find that no more tax evasion happens to Switzerland. So these kind of information sharing and transparency comes around the world. I'm sure it is going to mitigate the problem of tax evasion, because that leads to revenue loss. It also promotes sometimes illegitimate activities. People get away with money laundering and things like that. So I think that is tax transparency all about. And then one more aspect was crypto assets. I think we all have been talking about crypto assets for a very, very long time now. And Government of India has been neutral, although it hasn't been legitimized, but it has been neutral on the issue of crypto assets. I think a uniform policy and transparency on digital assets has to be formed, crypto assets in particular I'm talking about. So I think the countries have to unanimously agree to a uniform crypto policy. At this point of time, I find different countries have different policies, which is why, crypto assets still have become a headache for the better part of the world.
Thank you so much, Sharath.
Thank you very much.
This is All India Radio giving you the world news. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar began his 3-day visit to Mozambique by holding meeting with President of Mozambique Assembly Esperança Bias engagements in capital Maputo. They discussed the historic cooperation between the two countries and reiterated India's support for Mozambique's sustainable development. The conversation focused on counter-terrorism, disaster resilience and green growth. Dr. Jaishankar also virtually inaugurated the Buzi Bridge constructed as part of 132-kilometer Thika Buzi Nova Sofala road project. The bridge has been built by India. He said the bridge is a practical example of India-Mozambique solidarity and friendship. The External Affairs Minister also held talks with Mozambican Minister of Transport and Communication and Chairman Mozambican Port and Rail Authority Matias Magala. He took a ride in a made-in-India train from Maputo to Machava with Mr. Magala. They talked about expanding train networks, electric mobility and waterways connectivity. Dr. Jaishankar met community representatives and friends of India at the reception hosted by the High Commissioner in Maputo. In his address, he emphasized the significance of the time-tested and historic relationship that is expanding. A high-level U.S. delegation led by U.S. Senator Todd Young called on Science and Technology Minister Dr. Jitendra Singh in New Delhi on Friday. During the meeting, Todd Young sought deeper bilateral cooperation with India in areas like artificial intelligence, cyber security, semiconductor, clean energy, biotechnology and defense. On the occasion, Dr. Jitendra Singh said, in the last 9 years, government has tried to implement social sector schemes through science-based solutions to bring ease of living for the common man. He said his ministry will support Indo-US collaboration in budding and promising startups in biotech, dairy and agri-tech sectors. India's Electronics and IT Minister Rajiv Chandrasekhar has said that the government is determined to develop artificial intelligence and AI-powered solutions that will benefit India as well as transform lives of its people. Addressing the technology roundtable organized by Business Standard in Bengaluru on Friday, Mr. Chandrasekhar said the broad vision of the country's AI program is to secure India's position as one of the leading nations in the AI space. He said government is working in partnership with academia, startups and industry players to develop cutting-edge applications and scalable problem solutions in various fields such as agriculture, health and sustainable cities. Japan, India and France have announced a common platform for talks among bilateral creditors to coordinate restructuring of Sri Lanka's debt. The move is expected to serve as a model for solving the debt woes of middle-income economies. During a media briefing, Japanese Finance Minister Shunichi Suzuki said the launch of this negotiation process with such a broad-based group of creditors is a historical outcome. He said this committee is open to all creditors. French Director General of the Treasury, Emmanuel Moulin, told the briefing that the group is ready to hold the first round of talks as soon as possible. Qatar and Bahrain have announced that they will resume their diplomatic ties after over 2 years since the Arab boycott of Qatar was lifted. In January 2021, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain and Egypt ended a 3.5-year embargo of Qatar, but all except Bahrain had already restored travel and trade links in 2021. The decision to resume diplomatic relations was made during the second meeting of the Bahraini-Qatari Follow-up Committee held at the headquarters of the GCC General Secretariat in the Saudi capital. The UAE Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed Al Nahyan, welcomed the agreement and emphasized its importance in supporting joint Gulf action for the brighter future of GCC countries. The decision has been positively received by foreign ministers from other GCC countries, the Arab League, the United States and Russia. A powerful cyclone Ilsa hit Western Australia close to Port Hedland as a Category 5 storm on Friday. The storm has been, however, downgraded to Category 3, but a red alert remains in place for some inland communities. No reports of injury to people or critical infrastructure has been reported. With wind speed of 218 km per hour recorded in Bidu Island just off the coast, the cyclone was the strongest to hit the region in some 14 years. India paid tribute to the architect of the Indian Constitution, Dr. Bhim Rao Ambedkar, on his birth anniversary on Friday. In a message, President Draupadi Murmu stated that B.R. Ambedkar's basic mantra, educate, organize and struggle to bring the deprived communities to the mainstream of society, will always remain relevant. Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar has paid tributes to Dr. Bhim Rao Ramji Ambedkar on his birth anniversary and recalled him as an intellectual, legal stalwart, social reformer and a true nationalist. In a tweet, Prime Minister Narendra Modi saluted Dr. Ambedkar for dedicating his life towards the empowerment of the deprived and exploited sections of the society. Tourism Minister G. Kishan Reddy and Social Justice and Empowerment Minister Dr. Virendra Kumar flagged off Bharat Gaurav tourist train from Hazrat Nizamuddin railway station in Delhi to mark the occasion. Festivals of Vaisakhi, Vishu, Rongali Bihu, Navabarsh, Vaisakhi, Mishadi and Puttand Pirappu are being celebrated in different parts of the country on Friday. In a message, President Draupadi Murmu said that these farmers' festivals celebrated in different parts of our country present a glimpse of India's rich cultural heritage and diversity. Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar said these festivals are an integral part of India's diverse culture and tradition, symbolizing the spirit of unity, harmony and brotherhood. Prime Minister Narendra Modi hoped that the occasion will deepen the bonds of togetherness in society. He wished everyone a healthy and happy year ahead. In IPL cricket, chasing a target of 229 runs set by Sunrisers Hyderabad, Kolkata Knight Riders were 159 for 5 in 16 overs at Eden Gardens, Kolkata when reports last came in. Earlier, put into bat, Hyderabad scored 228 runs for the loss of 4 wickets in stipulated 20 overs. Aman Sehrawat clinched India's first gold medal at the Asian Wrestling Championship 2023 in Astana, Kazakhstan. Sehrawat topped the podium in men's 57 kg freestyle category on the penultimate day of the competition. He defeated Kyrgyzstan's Almazman Bekov 9-4 to win the gold medal. Aman Sehrawat's victory in Astana ensured the men's freestyle 57 kg gold medal stayed with India for the 4th year running. This was Aman Sehrawat's second podium of the year. Last year, Sehrawat was the first Indian wrestler to win gold at the Under-23 World Championships in Spain. Now let us take a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. The Guardian writes that IMF calls for another Green Eagles movement on debt relief and aid. The New York Times reports biggest US banks report bumper profits amid industry turmoil. The Globe and Mail reports man suspected of leaking secret US intelligence documents to appear in Boston court. The Financial Times writes German Foreign Minister warns China on Taiwan. The Business Recorder writes North Korea says it tested a new solid fuel ICBM, warns of extreme horror. Japan Times reports in Brazil bioeconomy initiatives offer hope of a less destructive future. The European Space Agency has successfully launched its mission to Jupiter's moons after weather conditions halted on Thursday's liftoff. The Ariane 5 rocket was launched from the ESA's spaceport in Kourou, French Guiana as scheduled. The Jupiter Icy Moons Explorer JUICE project aims to send a satellite on an 8-year journey to reach the icy moons of the gas giant. The spacecraft will use a gravitational slingshot technique around Earth and Venus to give it enough energy to reach Jupiter. The probe, worth 1.6 billion euros, could tell us whether Jupiter's major moons, Ganymede, Callisto and Europa, have the conditions to support simple life. Jupiter's 3 are thought to harbor big liquid water oceans beneath their icy shells. And now a quick look at the headlines once again. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi lays foundation stone and inaugurates development projects worth nearly 11,000 crore rupees in Assam. Bihu performance by over 11,000 folk dancers and drummers in Guwahati enters Guinness World Records. Festivals of Vishu, Rongali Bihu, Navabarsha, Baishakdi, Meshadi and Puttanda Pirapu being celebrated in different parts of India. India's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman says global policy response is required for crypto assets. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar inaugurates Buzi Bridge in Mozambique built by India. India, Japan and France announce common platform for Sri Lanka creditors. In sports, Aman Sehrawat clinches India's first gold medal at Asian Wrestling Championship 2023 in Astana. And in IPL cricket, Sunrisers Hyderabad set a victory target of 229 runs before Kolkata Knight Riders in Kolkata. And now, before we end, let us listen to Mahatma Gandhi's favorite bhajan Vaishnav Jan by artists from Georgia. And with that, we end this bulletin. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.